Looks like that press conference is getting started again. We're going to get an update on that deadly shooting at an ICE facility in Dallas. Let's listen.
That I'm a person who believes very, very strongly in the power of prayer, and that prayer changes things. And so I'm going to ask everyone, please join me in praying for the families of the folks who lost their lives today. Pray for the speedy recovery for those who are hurt and were injured in what happened today. But maybe even more to the point, we're a country and a city that needs prayer. So I'm going to ask you all to join me also in praying for this city, that we can come together at a time like this, and that we can be there for one another the way we always have in times like this, to support one another, to help us all get through this very difficult time, not just in our city, but in our country. And that's why I'd ask you to pray for our nation. There's a lot going on right now in our country. A lot of it's confusing. It's a scary time. I've got children. I've got 3 young children. And I'm here to tell you that it is challenging to explain to them what's going on in our country right now. But I said before, and I'll say it again, I believe in the power of prayer to change things. And it can change the hearts of people. It can change this country, it can change the city. So please pray for everyone who's affected by today's tragedy. I also want to say thank you to the Dallas Police Department, and say thank you to the Dallas Sheriff's Department, Dallas County Sheriff's Department, Texas Department of Public Safety, and all of our various federal law enforcement partners who acted so quickly today to make sure that today's tragedy wasn't worse than what it was. So on behalf of the city of Dallas, I want to say thank you to all of you. And you're going to hear from some of those folks later, but I want to let you know that we appreciate what you all do, not just today, but every day, to help keep us all safe. And lastly, and this is really important, I would ask all of the city of Dallas residents who can hear me right now, let's be patient, let's remain calm, and let's let our law enforcement partners, our police department, do their job. This is an active investigation. There's still a lot of unanswered questions. And I want to encourage all of you to exercise a little bit of restraint and allow them to do their job to help make sure this continues to be a safe city, and that they can help us figure out what happened here today. But with that, I want to say, again, thank you to all the folks who came out this morning from our law enforcement community. I'll turn it over to our police chief, Daniel Como, to speak a little bit more directly to the investigation itself. And with that, Chief Como, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Today at approximately 6:40 a.m., we received a assist the officer call. We responded to the call, got to the scene, and we later learned that we had 4 individuals that were shot, 2 of them deceased, including the shooter. The DPD was able to locate the shooter, who was deceased. We're going to be working this investigation shoulder to shoulder with our federal partners. The FBI is on scene, and right now I'm going to introduce you to the SAC of the Dallas Field Division, FBI Joe Rothrock.
Yeah, good morning. My name's Joe Rothrock. I'm the special agent in charge of the Dallas FBI Field Office. I want to first start by thanking our partners in local law enforcement, specifically the Dallas Police Department for their quick and timely response. I can confirm at this time that the FBI is investigating this incident as an act of targeted violence. It is unfortunately just the most recent example we've seen of targeted violence, to include here in North Texas, where back on July 4th, we saw a coordinated attack carried out against an immigration detention center in Alvarado, Texas. What I can also share with you is that early evidence that we've seen from rounds that were found near the suspected shooter contain messages that are anti-ICE in nature. Again, this is just the most recent example of this type of attack. This will be a whole of government response. There will be no resource not utilized to bring all those individuals who are responsible to bring them to justice and to hold them accountable. While we're not releasing identities of any victims at this time, what I can confirm for you is no members of law enforcement were hurt during this attack. If any member of the public has information that would help the FBI's investigation, I would ask that you please report that to 1-800-CALL-FBI. Again, any piece of information will be helpful, but this will be an ongoing investigation between us, a number of federal partners, and our local partners, again, to ensure that anyone responsible is held accountable. With that, I will turn it over to my counterpart from the ICE Enforcement and Removal Office.
Good morning. My name is Joshua Johnson. I'm the acting field office director for ICE Dallas. I'll be brief with my comments, but I do want to start off by saying thank you to the Dallas Police Department, Dallas FBI, HSI, CBP, ATF, and virtually every law enforcement officer in North Texas for your support. This is the second time I've had to stand in front of you and talk about a shooter at one of my facilities, and I think that the takeaway from all of this is that the rhetoric has to stop. There are people out there who are seeing what is being placed online, and they're coming and they're doing acts of violence against ICE employees. So that's kind of all I have for today, is that it's just got to stop. It's dangerous, and people are losing their lives. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming. We really appreciate it. Again, thank you all so much. As it was said here today, if you do have any information, reach out to 1-800-CALL-FBI. Thank you. Thank you.
This needs to stop. Violence is wrong. Politically motivated violence is wrong. It was 2 weeks ago today that we saw a political assassination in Utah that tore the heart out of much of this country. This is the third shooting in Texas directed at ICE or CBP. This must stop. To every politician who is using rhetoric demonizing ICE and demonizing CBP, stop. To every politician demanding that ICE agents be doxxed and calling for people to go after their families, stop. This has very real consequences. Look, in America, we disagree, that's fine, that's the democratic process, but your political opponents are not Nazis. We need to learn to work together without demonizing each other, without attacking each other, and I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to the brave men and women of law enforcement. I want to say thank you to the brave men and women of ICE and CBP and everyone who puts their lives on the line to keep us safe. The divisive rhetoric tragically has real consequences. I hope that every one of us will pray, number one, for the safety of law enforcement that are risking their lives to keep us safe. Number two, for the health of those who were shot and injured today. We still don't know the full details of who was injured, but for the families also of the victims of this shooting. Violence has no place. It is wrong. And we should come together. If we want to have a debate about immigration policies, we can do so in the halls of Congress without demonizing each other, and especially without demonizing the men and women who every day put on a badge and go risk their lives to keep us safe. And we should not be putting language out there that inspires madmen to commit evil crimes. Our prayers are with the men and women of law enforcement, and we ought to come together and have some decency across the political aisle to say this violence is wrong and it needs to stop.
Senator, have you been told that immigrant detainees were the victims of today's shooting?
My understanding is the details of who the victims are still being ascertained, so I don't want to go ahead of law enforcement releasing these details. What they have said is that no law enforcement was injured, and so that's a natural inference, but I don't know the details.
Special Agent, can you talk a little bit about some of the evidence you mentioned earlier, just for clarity? I think there's going to be a lot of questions. Our understanding is that some of the shell casings had specific relevant to the motive. Give us more information.
So I'm not going to go into any more details at this time. We will come back to you when we have more details to share. Again, our goal here will be transparency as those details become available. But we are still in the early stages of an investigation. Information is still coming in. When we have more details, we will come back to this group.
And just clarity as well on the victims and the convincing question that people are asking. Just get clarity to make sure we're reporting and transparency with the victims.
I'm not going to be identifying victims at this time. The only thing I will confirm at this time is no law enforcement was injured. Certainly you can respect law enforcement's need to make notifications.
Why are we not saying that they were the detainees that were shot?
At this point in time, we're not going to take any additional questions from law enforcement. Again, I'd ask for you to respect the fact that this is an ongoing investigation. And as more details come available...
We're not asking for the names of the victims.
I understand.
In a general sense,
I will,
if the victims are the detainees...
The only thing I can say right now is no law enforcement was injured this morning as part of the attack. I won't be taking any more questions, neither will law enforcement this time. We'll come back to you later today or in the coming days when we have additional information. Thank you for your time.
Thank you a lot.
We've just been watching officials there in Dallas giving an update on a deadly shooting at an ICE facility. They are calling this an act of targeted violence, saying that they found messages on the rounds near the shooter with anti-ICE messaging on them. They say the shooter is dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And earlier, the ICE director told me that he had shot from a sniper position, or that suspect had shot from a sniper position. I want to go to our chief investigative correspondent, Aaron Katursky, for more on this. Aaron, I wanted to wait to get to you on the body count here because what the ICE statement is saying is a little different than what we just heard there. So can you clarify that?
And what we believe occurred is 3 individuals were shot, 2 of them fatally, and the shooter was subsequently found dead, it's believed, of a self-inflicted gunshot after trading fire with law enforcement responders. So in total, 4 people were shot, as you heard the Dallas police chief say, 3 victims and the shooter. We know the shooter is dead. 2 of the victims are believed to be dead. The authorities still would not say whether they were detainees, but they did say that no law enforcement officers were hurt in this, and multiple law enforcement sources have told us, Diane, that it was detainees that were shot in Dallas today.
And we heard the ICE field director saying the rhetoric here has to stop. I want to bring in FBI agent Brad Garrett for a little bit more on. Brad, what do you make of the messaging here and the fact that they won't say yet if these victims were detainees or perhaps other ICE employees?
So if you go back to what the acting director said to you and I, Diane, and Aaron a few minutes ago, the comment about trustees, maybe folks that are still in the immigration process, but they're trusted folks that may have on different clothing just to separate them from the detainees. I mean, assuming for a second that the shooter had a clarity of who he was shooting, it would be pretty obvious, typically, if a van pulls up and people step out of it and they've got on shackles, that they are the folks that got arrested. If you have people that, A, aren't law enforcement, but B, actually or sort of contractors, for lack of better terms, for ICE. Maybe that's who got shot. There's something in between here. I don't think they're not telling us the truth. They're just not providing clarity as to exactly who got shot. And so we'll see. That'll probably come out, I would think, later today. But if you combine that with what they just gave us about anti-ICE comments on the bullets, now who does that sound like from 2 weeks ago? That this person was angry at ICE, not the immigrants. So I think that will get sorted out through the background of the shooter, and maybe they already know that. They're just not going to talk about it publicly yet.
And our Maria Villarreal was there at that press conference. Maria, what happens next with this investigation now?
Listen, Diane, we asked multiple questions that we have been talking about all morning long that are imperative to understanding for purposes of clarity and transparency in this investigation. Every person that was up here, every piece of law enforcement that was up here representing the investigation was very clear in saying that they still have a lot more to do. However, they were also very quick to give us information about the shell casings. As Brad mentioned, the writing on the shell casings. About halfway through, we saw Senator Cruz, show up to this press conference. And then as the press conference was finished, Dallas PD and then Dallas leaders left the location while federal agents and the senators stuck around to answer just a few questions and give a little bit more of a statement. They were very clear and not wanting to tell us, who exactly were the victims that were shot, other than to confirm that one of the people that had died was the shooter in and of himself. I think at this point, we're probably going to push for more information throughout the day on who the shooter was, more details on the location. We tried to press also on security, not at this location, not at just this location, Diane, but other ones across the country, to try and understand exactly how they are beefing things up. That information was not given out today. So more than likely, we will see that sort of response over the next few hours. And then, of course, the question of who exactly were the victims that were shot in the situation, and were they the targets of this particular shooter? That's really the big one here.
And I want to bring in our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas. Pierre, the acting ICE director told me earlier that he's putting all other ICE facilities on high alert. So what does that mean from a security standpoint?
Well, clearly they think that these ICE facilities are the target of potential shooters. And we just got some new information. The FBI director, Kash Patel, has put out images, what we believe are shell casings recovered at the scene. Hopefully we can get those images up shortly. Those images, at least one of them has anti-ICE, the words anti-ICE clearly written on the shell casing. That is the point that they seem to be emphasizing, that even as this investigation unfolds, the early indicators, the early evidence points to what the FBI special agents in charge described as a targeted act of violence. So we don't know yet exactly whether it was contractors, people who were being detained, who were the victims, but they are suggesting strongly that the ICE facility itself was the target of whoever fired those shots. Again, at the briefing, they gave no information about the shooter in terms of what the person looks like, anything like that. We'll be pressing on that, obviously, to see if they have a name. But right now, this is a situation where they believe a shooter from an elevated position, sniper position, which again raises all kinds of concerns about intent, is what we have so far.
Yeah, the director said from a couple of 100 miles away. Aaron, what does an attack like this do for fears of a copycat?
Well, clearly the acting director of ICE is concerned enough to put his agency on alert now for potential copycat attacks. And there have already been attacks on ICE facilities in Texas and elsewhere. So he's very concerned about that. But also the method. Senator Cruz mentioned the similarities to the Charlie Kirk shooting, a sniper's position from a couple hundred yards away, messages on bullets. This is a fear of law enforcement that it's a dangerous time, a toxic environment, and that people's ire is drawn to different facts of American life, whether it's an immigration agenda, whether it's an agenda pushed by a conservative commentator or something else. And the fear is the increasing willingness to use violence in order to carry out that grievance.
And Maria, we heard over and over again during this press conference that the rhetoric has to stop. What is the sentiment there in the community?
I think, Diane, the sentiment can be felt just in this press conference, and then obviously it's going to seep over into the community as well. Listen, people that are here local from this community, whether it's the Dallas mayor, the county leaders that were here, Dallas police, they made a very clear statement by leaving once Senator Cruz got up there. And that's because they want to make sure that they get this investigation done correctly, and with as much clarity and transparency as they can give the community. They know that this kind of a situation can really ramp things up and create a lot of tension here in Dallas. We have seen it before with other situations. So for them, I'm hearing from local leaders, their focus right now isn't just the investigation, but also trying to be as open as they can with the community, to share as much as they can, to keep obviously the investigation pristine, but also to make sure that they don't create any sort of chaos that could, spill into the streets, create more protests, create frustration with the people that are living here on both sides of this issue.
And Maria, one of the first things the FBI official there mentioned was the fact that this is just the latest in a series of violent attacks at facilities like this, or attempts. What did you make of that?
Diane, I think that not just his reaction and answer, but we have to also look at the ICE agent that was here, Joshua Johnson. He basically said this is the second time he's had to make this sort of statement regarding, some of his agents being, targeted. He was clearly emotional in his own law enforcement way. He was uncomfortable, you could tell, being up there. I think for them, this is a big concern about what the repercussions could potentially be on the backside of this. I mean, obviously, they want to make sure that the investigation is their utmost priority, but at the same time, I mean, they also want to protect their law enforcement as well. And I think that's the same sentiment that we see from local law enforcement here. Let us focus on the investigation, at the same time protect our law enforcement. But they do have to answer questions, right, about the other people that may have been victims of this shooting, how they will protect them as well moving forward. So, I think for me, what I took away from this was they are trying to do their job, but they are not oblivious to the fact that there is a lot of tension around this particular issue, not just here in Dallas, but around the country as well. And they're trying to mitigate that.
All right, Aaron Katursky, Brad Garrett, Pierre Thomas, Maria Villarreal, thank you.